Strap yourself in,
because we're set up, switched on, and ready to go.
You are watching and listening to Chris and Leicester Till I Die TV on YouTube and your favourite podcasts.
watch us on YouTube.
Listen on your favourite podcast platform.
Or ask your smart speaker
to play the podcast Leicester Till I Die.
Subscribe, like.
Right, Chris.
Good evening. How are you doing? Well, say breaking news. That maybe I've got a bit of bad news. I think sympathy does go out to Ukraine. I mean, if it's not bad enough as what's going on in that country, Scotland have just beaten them 4-0. And they were sat there thinking things couldn't get any worse. This is Leicester Till I Die. It is the debate show. The debate tonight is, should Premier League clubs be allowed to buy second-tier clubs, if you like, for want of a better word, in the same country? They do it in other countries, as in, we'll have a look later at some graphics, but Man City owners own clubs all around the world. Why can't they do it in this country? Maybe it would just help a few of them out. This is Leicester Till I Die TV. It's Friday night, it's 9 o'clock, and it's the debate show.
Watch us on YouTube.
Listen on your favourite podcast platform.
Or ask your smart speaker
to play the podcast Leicester Till I Die.
Subscribe, like, follow, and join in now.
We are on Twitch as well now. LTIDtv. And if you're listening on the podcast, thank you so much for sharing your ears with us. We really do appreciate it. A few hellos before we get going. John, good evening. How the devil are you, sir? Let me know. Does it in Germany? Do they allow it? Do you have I know they do in Spain, but do they in Germany allow multi-ownership? Scott, good evening. How the devil are you, sir? James, good evening. We are well. Hope you are too. Renee, how the devil are you? How the devil are you? Yeah, we do know Rooney went. I did that on the news show earlier. So basically, this is what we're looking at here. So you can see Red Bull own multiple clubs. The owners of City Football, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 clubs they own. Could they not own a few in this country? Like I say, to me, it makes sense. But then, you know me. Brown sauce makes sense to me. So we've got some people in that are going to discuss this with me, agree with me, disagree. It's not a competition. It doesn't matter. We don't have a vote on it at the end. But we will be chatting about it. First of all, you know this guy. And especially if you go to church every Sunday, he is the second coming. And I don't know how he can do that on the one night. But there we Brad, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, mate. I'm doing very well, thanks. How are you?
Not so bad, not so bad. I see you're still in the old parlour there, the Madame's parlour with the red curtains behind you.
Yeah, still here, mate. Still here, It's a good place to be sometimes.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm just glad that you're not seeing anybody while we're actually live on air. That's good. People know you from here, Leicester Till I Die TV. Everybody's details are in the YouTube description below if they want to check you out. But you've obviously your new channel, Matter of Opinion. You answered a lot of questions last night.
Yeah, I did. I did my first of what will be a monthly special where basically you can ask my opinion on absolutely anything. You can ask a general question because you're still only getting an opinion to an answer, I guess. So it was a great show. It's really done well. I got a lot of interaction from you guys. You were all brilliant. And if you still want to go and check it out, just to hear some of the questions and hear my opinions, and even if you want to even if you're watching it back and thinking, "Oh, I wish I'd have joined it," get commenting in the video. I'll reply to it. I hope you don't mind this, Chris. I want to say a massive thank you because I hit a target over the course of deciding to make this video and advertising it. I reached the first goal of every YouTuber that wants to do it, and I hit 100 subs. I'm at 104 now, so I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody that's joined in, taken part. And if you want to find it, not just here in the links in the description, my Twitter handle is at Fulltime Focus. I appreciate you giving me the floor there, mate.
No. You well, even though you didn't really answer my should Ryan Bertrand and Vestergaard be given double the wage salary extensions. Do you agree, Dave? Should Vestergaard and Bertrand be given double your money contract extension? I jest, Dave. I jest. Welcome back. We didn't put you off last week.
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm just slightly tooled up differently this week, man.
That's okay. We're glad to have you with us because, like you say, you're a little bit behind with the news up there. Which county are you in?
Well, I'm in Surrey now.
Surrey, right?
Normally West Sussex.
You see, West Sussex. The old news doesn't get there as quick as anywhere else, does it?
It's the longest day I was on the beach.
Yeah. Did you ever remember we signed Cambiasso for a season? That was good. And
John Samuels is having a good time.
Yes, yeah. Len Glover sends his best, by the way.
Okay.
James says, "Evening, Brad." Helen says, "Hi, Brad."
Good evening, everybody.
Yeah, Renee, the chat in the chat about transfers. I won't be putting your details in there because it's not that show tonight. We are talking about big clubs owning little clubs, and first of all, I apologise to Dan. I don't consider Burnley to be a little club, but he did offer to come on, and I wasn't going to have him on. I was just going to have the three of us talking here, but then Mike did approach me, and the fact that he follows a little club actually made me think maybe we should have him on. What's it like following Man United?
Well,
oh, come on, mate. Come on. That was it. I felt that. Yeah, that was a good one. I was fishing there, wasn't it?
yeah, I saw the fishing rod, but and I leaned my head away. like a good salmon would, leaped away.
Newport County, of course, isn't it?
Yeah, we did beat Leicester in the FA Cup.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Hang on, let me just mute you. Right, that shut him up. And let's get him back. Yeah. I mean,
mimic.
It's the one thing that's happened in your history that you can actually shout about, isn't it?
Yeah, but yeah,
Harlow beat us, so I shouldn't worry too much about it.
Well, this is true. We have got a good record of going out to smaller clubs in the FA Cup. But guys, I mean, I'll come to you first, Brad. I mean, when you look at this, and we're in this boat as well at Leicester here, because we own OHL Leuven. I can never remember the letters, etc. But the Belgian club. But I mean, that money, could that not be? What do you think, first of all, about the multi-club ownership?
You're not going to stop it because every country around the globe, no matter what their principles are to a point, are going to want somebody to make a standout team that everybody looks at and wants to watch their country's version of football. So it's clear as day. You look at the spread of them clubs and where they play their trait in football, and yeah, you've got some that allow a double up, of course, but there's always one that always stands out like a sore thumb out of them too anyway. It's always the same. They always prioritise. It's like a favourite child if they do it in separate leagues. But you're not going to stop it, and it may be seen as good for football by some. It's going to be what it is. So it's the way football's going, whether you like it or not. So you're not going to stop it, but I'm not on board with this 2 club rules just to shock the statement and get it out there. I wouldn't be on board with something like it. So get that
You
statement.
wouldn't be, or you wouldn't be.
No, I wouldn't
You
want
wouldn't
us to
be.
do it.
Right. I mean, Dave, you look at that, and I get why this works, because if you are the owners of Manchester City with the huge squad they've got, and we know Chelsea do it as well. There's so many players that go out to lower league clubs, and they probably could potentially send them abroad. But if you've got your own feeder club, surely that would help you out as a club.
Well, it would, but I don't know how you do it. English football is slightly different to others. Can you imagine? I mean, we'd probably take on Derby now, wouldn't we? It's that kind of scenario.
Yeah.
Who would you choose? How would it be chosen? The fans wouldn't like it at all.
There's a lot of questions in there as to how it would work. I agree. And somebody said earlier in the chat you would maybe have to have boundaries. That it has to be a certain league. It can't be, say, Championship. It has to be 1 and 2, and it has to be out of a certain area. I mean, Mike, you look at that, and do you wish sort of Newport, could be owned by a larger club that could help you, or would you prefer sort of to stay, independent as you are?
I think I'd prefer to stay independent. It gives the club its own sort of philosophy, it gives the club its own sort of branding, rather than being classed as the knockoff version of a bigger club. And I think the bigger clubs would probably agree. The fan bases of a bigger club, like Brad said, he wouldn't want that to happen. Even Dave pretty much said he really wouldn't want that to happen. So it wouldn't work on both parties, I don't think, for it to be in England. I don't mind it being abroad, because you can, send your players out on loan there. You can send, networking out to different parts of like in Manchester City's case, for example, they've got a team in France, Spain, America, Australia, India. There's a whole branch where they can send a scouting network. But I wouldn't want it, because I wouldn't want us to be classed as the second version of another team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, if I'm Man City and I've got this young guy coming up and he's sort of 16, 17, what am I going to gain by sending him out to India to a club? He's not going to get, it's a different style of football. Is he going to sort of pick up the right things that I want him to have to play possibly in the English Premier League?
Yeah, that's the problem. But then I think the way in which you would do the loaning system, the sending out, bringing back system is you'd find different players that would suit your different feeder clubs. In Man City's case, like you see 3 or 4 of them go to Sporting Girona, and then they come back. One of them was Pedro Porro's. I think he's still there. And they send them to. You've got to have good scouts to know which players to send to leagues of what you want to get out of that player, development-wise.
Brad, I mean, let's have a look at sort of the most recent thing in my mind, anyway, which is Bury have suddenly gone out of business. Well, not suddenly, but they went out of business because obviously lack of money. They were using Man City's old training ground for their training facilities and had run it down. Now, Man City then called in a loan saying, this has got to end. And, Bury is no more. And we know what it's like because we've been there as a club. If it was a point that Manchester City could have taken over Bury, they're probably never going to sort of clash in the in the leagues, although obviously it could happen. And in the FA Cup, if the balls are drawn out, put it back in and draw another ball out. But could that not have saved Bury if they had been owned by a larger club?
Well, yeah, but so could better management. And by that, what I mean is the owner of the club could have managed it better. They could have been, they could have been more successful in football. Football's a cruel mistress. And unfortunately, we've seen at the highest of the highs, the O'Neill years, we never thought they were going to end. And then, poof, like a trapdoor, they fell between us. It happens to the best of clubs. I think what the problem is and where the issue can get fixed is they need to come up with a far better solution to the point where if you want to buy a football club, and I know people might give me a lot of backlash for this, but hear me out. The idea would be that if you're ready to buy a football club, because it's no easy feat and you're going to invest a lot of money, you have to provide a safety net. You know, you put a deposit on a flat or a house or whatever, and that gets kept. And if you do well, you could earn that, you get that deposit back once you move on or whatever. But if you decide, so if you decide to sell the club, you're going to make the money back. But if you fail as a businessman, because that's what football is when you're an owner of a club, you're a businessman. It's not a sport, it's a business. If they then have already agreed when they took over the club, say 50 million of my own money, my own pocket, or whatever they agree on, will stay here and be forever used. So if I fail in my job as an owner and run this club into debt, the club has something to fall back on while they find a new owner, and I agree to sell the club and get rid of it. That way, no club's in trouble. You don't need multi-billion takeovers. And to be fair, I would rather, and I'm just saying this example, Mike, you're a non-league fan as well as a United fan, but any other non-league fan out there or lower league fan out there that's listening, what would you rather be known as? Your football club's name or the lab experiment for Man City's, the Man Uniteds and the Arsenals? Because that's what you see happening. Here's an idea. Make our under-23s play in the lower leagues. It benefits England all round as a league, as a development.
But it doesn't benefit, does it, David? I come to you on this. It doesn't benefit the likes of Bury. And yes, you can say better management, but I mean, we are in a changing world here of football. Now, if you are growing up in Greater Manchester, there are quite a few teams. I mean, that's London, but let's have a look at Manchester here. There are quite a few teams that you can support if you are in the Greater Manchester. Ignore the Liverpool ones.
Yeah, Liverpool would be good, yeah.
Tranmere would feel like this as well. But what chance have the likes of Preston, Bury, Stockport County got when people within that area, all they see on the telly, all they see everywhere is Manchester City, Manchester United? No matter how well you manage that, to have a football club with the staff that it has, then it's not necessarily a badly run club. It's just that they don't get they can't balance the books. They can't get the fans in.
Well, I think what Brad's saying is right. They're badly managed, these smaller clubs, because they don't seem so accountable to anybody. You go down to non-league football, there's so many crooks in that business that when clubs do make money, they're being robbed blind. I would like to see probably Premier League clubs look after non-league clubs more at grassroots level and improve the standard of football and the standard of conditions and changing facilities down there, because there's some loyal supporters that go to these games, 500-600 people every week, and they're being robbed blind. But the other question I was going to ask was, I don't think I've answered your question, ever, but anyway, what happens if a team gets relegated from the Premier League who owns another club? I mean, how does that work? Take a Wolves or a Derby or a Villa.
It's a fair point, and it's along the, I know a lot, living in Bournemouth, Paul, as I do, a lot of friends and people down here are fans of a Premier League team, but they also support Bournemouth because Bournemouth were never going to be in the Premier League. And eventually, obviously, it clashed. I mean, yeah, it could happen. We could do what you do, which is you say go to maybe I don't know, it's called the conference now, the National League, whatever it is. If a club goes down that road, I mean, there are going to be obviously questions on that. Yes, there are, but it happens with other industries where you can own the same, two different businesses in the same town. I think if it's managed fairly and above board, it
was tried before, Chris, wasn't it? Was it Maxwell, Reading, and Swindon? Was it? No, Oxford and Reading.
Clubs, though,
Oxford and Reading.
No, I don't think it didn't go through, though, did it? He owned Oxford, but I don't think
he was going to merge
he
them.
Tried to do it.
Yeah,
but I don't think I don't. As far as I remember, it didn't go through.
It didn't happen.
He did try.
Point being that you've got to trust these owners, and how can you do that? People are in it for their own good, as Brad said earlier. It's a business to them. Can you trust them to do what the fans want to do?
Yeah, it doesn't matter how well the club does it as well. If they're making financial losses and it's more than just bad ownership. No one wants to invest in that, no matter how good it might be for the game and how good it is for football. If you're going to look at it and say, right, tell me my financial aspects, they're going to say, well, you're going to lose 80 million over the next. No, I'm not interested. Unless you're going to tell me we're going to make 180 million in the year after the fifth and guarantee it, I'm not interested. They're not going to take that risk. It's a capital risk. It doesn't matter how good of a gesture and a kind gesture would be to fix football. Because if kind gestures did it, I'd be on board with it. But for me, like you just said there about trusting some of these ownerships, what was it, 6 or 7 of them were willing to, without even letting us know, thanks for the memo, we're about to make a Super League. Without letting us, the people who built football, know. They were like, oh, sorry, sorry.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, but then you would hope maybe, and maybe I'm got my gold tinted spectacles on here. You would hope maybe you've got people from the FA or the whatever that could somehow monitor it. I agree that these are problems, and I don't have answers to these problems. But what I'm saying, Mike, let's come to you. You're a Newport fan, and I get, yes, you do want your independence, but would you sooner have a club that is owned, let's say, by Leicester City, and we send you down players, so you'd have like the Kieran Dewsbury Halls, the Luke Thomases, the Harvey Barnes, or and still be known as Newport, but be a feeder club to us, or would you sooner go out of business? I'm not saying Newport are going to go out of business or they're badly run. I'm just saying, as you look at it, and as football moves forward, I can see more and more of the smaller clubs disappearing.
Look, they have done. Sorry. Yeah, they have done, haven't they?
Yeah. It like you say, Brad mentioned it with Bury. It comes right from the top of just ownership, bad ownership, and poor business management at the very top. That's why a lot of these teams go out of business. Whether you chuck, these big clubs money at them, will that solve it? It probably will solve it, but like what Brad said, I didn't get a chance to really answer it. But good management in the right areas will solve anything. Rather than, I know obviously money thrown at it would solve it. Obviously it would. In terms of the question, though, I mean, yes, I want my own identity as a football club. Any football club wants that. They don't want to be a second fiddle or a feeder club or a second pathway of a big team. But yeah, I think something like affiliate is the right word. If we could get senior affiliate for League One, League Two teams rather than the so-called buy in the club, if that makes sense. Because you can get like different types of affiliation. You can get a harsh affiliation where the club has control on training facilities and budgeting, and then you can have a cool affiliate, which is where they just send you loan players that they want to develop at your club and then move on. Because we've got an affiliation with Cardiff, Swansea, and Bristol, where they give us loan players a couple a season or a couple every other seasons, but they have no like input on our budgeting, on our training facilities. So something like that from a bigger team, no respect to Cardiff, Swansea and Bristol, from a bigger team like a Leicester or a Tottenham or an Everton, that would benefit us. Like I said, I wouldn't want a team to buy us, but an affiliation I would definitely stand by.
So if you were on the brink of going out of business and Manchester City were allowed to buy another club within the United Kingdom, you would sooner go out of business than be part of a Manchester City setup, is what you're saying then?
I think you get stung by the nettles whichever way you go with it. Because look, I would never.
You do, yeah.
But I have seen us go out of business. We came back and the fans rebuilt. That's what's more difficult. If I take Newport hat away from it, absolutely, I would let a club buy it. It's just the fact that when you get reborn as a team, Hereford have done it. We've seen even further down the pyramid, AFC Rushden and Diamonds have done it. You come back, and Bury have done it now, only in the last couple of years. The fans and the locals of the area will put together a consortium to, lead the team and become, part of the board of this new reborn team. So I think it'd be hard to do that, because I think even if they went out of business, we've seen even Macclesfield with what's his name, Jimmy Bullard, I think it is. You're gonna is it Robbie Savage or Bullard? Yeah, Robbie Savage. Yeah, you're gonna get this reborn no matter what happens. I think even if you do lose teams, it's an ultimatum that is difficult to side with, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, Brad, I get. As I said, obviously there's two sides to this, obviously, and I'm sort of playing devil's advocate to the three of you here. But as a fan, Bury FC, yeah, they've come back. It's great to see that they're back. They're having to start again at the bottom. They're never going to get anywhere, are they? And isn't football about having a dream?
I said that about Luton when it happened to them, when they went into financial ruin and went all the way down the conferences, and they were within a kick up. They were in a goal of being a Premier League side. We've seen it with Blackpool. Never say never in football, mate. We've seen so many, never going to happen moments. We were a part of one of them. And sometimes as a club, as bad as it is and as dark as them days are, sometimes as a club you need to go through that, because football feels sometimes like life. You go through a hell of a lot to get to your end goal. And whatever that is, whether that's to get to the pinnacle of the Premiership, whether that's to get back to the Football League, whether that's to win that unprecedented FA Cup that you've failed in the last 4 or 5 attempts, whether it's to conquer England or Europe, whatever your goal is as a football club and a football fan, you still keep them goals no matter what happens. And sometimes you hit League One or you go bust and start again to get to where you're going. But guess what? That just means the joy and the experience of your club goes for a time. It comes rising from the ashes like a fox, mate. That classic, I'm going to use it. I'm going to steal it for this. They just get there again and they build again. And then the next generation can be telling grandkids the story of how the rise and fall of, Bury, the rise and fall of Oldham, if they ever got back to the Premiership, the rise and fall of Luton. It's a fairy tale that's ready to be written. And it's just one of them, mate. Things happen in football, things happen in life, just like they do in football, where you can't help it no matter what. And, Mike's already thrown out the officiate thing. I do. Yeah, I see where you're coming from totally. But Dave, I mean, we looked at that Manchester map before. If you are a Stockport County, you are living in the shadow of the big clubs, aren't you? And you are never in Manchester with the way, and football has changed over the years. I mean, you look when football started, the big clubs were your Boltons, your Blackpools, your Huddersfield. Where are they all now? Bolton had a bit of a thing. Burnley, they're all sort of not sort of, included in that, if you like, anymore. But as a Stockport fan, I say you're a club. Over the years, your support, if you like, is going to get less and less and less, because you've got those two big clubs within your catchment area. And as kids growing up, how many kids grow up supporting a team because they're watching them on the telly? How many Man United fans don't live in Manchester? How many Chelsea fans don't live in Chelsea?
I think there's a couple of things there. I mean, one of my son-in-laws is a Fulham fan. He stopped going when they got in the Premier League the first time or whenever it was, because it wasn't the same. He could walk around the ground in the old days of Division 2 and Division 3 and whatever it was. He supports Leatherhead now. He goes down there quite often. So people aren't just, Premier League infatuated. It's football. And I think the other thing that happens is if a club does go bust, like Bury, then it becomes a fans club. And that's something we all dream of, really, owning our own club, whether it be in the third division or League 2 or in the Premier League, It's just a thing. You want to be part of it. A lot of these guys don't go to football to sit in the stands and cheer and never really get to see the players or anything. They go to be part of a social club and part of a community.
But is that, and I don't know disrespect here because I'm probably older than you are, but is that an old-fashioned concept of football? Does that keep a club going?
Well, it still is going, yeah. It's still happening in non-league football. I don't know about the League Newports, but I'd imagine what you've been through. it's the same thing. The fans feel more part of it now.
Yeah, I mean, I've been down to Poole, right? And I moved down to Poole, and I worked there for a bit when I came down for the social side and what have you. And it was great. You suddenly realise that you stood behind the goal with the owner of the club. He's swearing and everything at the referee like you are. You know, it is a different game. But Poole Town will never ever be able to aspire to even be in League Two, because they haven't got a ground. They're playing at a converted bit of a school playing field that the school rent out to them. They won the division that they're in, and I don't know, I think it's about 10th or 11th in the pyramid. They won that 4 or 5 years on the trot. They could not move up to the next league because their ground wasn't good enough.
Yeah,
so
shouldn't Bournemouth sponsor them?
It's all very nice, this being, we were a local family club and what have you, but I've got no dreams because my club can't go anywhere because we haven't, got. But if Bournemouth came in, let's say, and they've now got a rich owner, they've got a Russian owner, how long for, who knows, and came in and said, look, let's own you or affiliate you or something like that, whichever way it is, that might just give them the backing and the security to go and move forward, Dave.
Well, that's what I said at the beginning. I think it'd be better to support grassroots football, of which Poole and my hometown, Nuneaton, are. Nuneaton Borough went bust, once or twice, and are coming back again, but they'll never get up into the Football League now. They could have done 30 years ago, but not now. But would I want Coventry looking after them? I don't think so.
Well, no, you wouldn't. But then, like I say, I wouldn't want Derby looking after us or us looking after Derby. There are sort of, there's got to be some borders. Yeah, but Mike, I mean, I know you wouldn't want Cardiff, for example, but you as Newport, you've got the big teams around you, haven't you? And I say big, but you compared, in fairness, I'm being brutally honest here, compared to Newport, probably Swansea and Cardiff are big clubs. Will you ever, with the structure as it is now, get into a position where you could be in the Premier League? And yes, I know Leicester did it not so long ago, and I know that's the dream that everybody can follow, but it's getting harder and harder for us to do. We're having to spend more and more just to stay where we are.
The problem that you've got is the Premier League gets stronger and everything else below it gets weaker. That's the issue.
Yeah.
So getting into the Championship I'm not going to say Newport because might get late, but for a League Two team to get into the Championship is probably not as hard. We've seen teams go League Two to the Championship, Luton, not so long ago. But to make that final step from the Championship to the Premier League, and if you do get there, to stay in it, it is absolutely immensely impossible because the money at the very top. Brad mentioned about those 6 owners. If they can just do that on the, a flick of a switch, who knows how much money and all is stacked behind these Premier League owners. But not just that, I know obviously Dave mentioned grassroots football, but the National League is a professional league, or all but. There's some teams in the National League South and North that are basically professional, that have got a lot of money compared to the rest of the division, which makes that division hard to get out of. The whole pyramid is, I'm not going to swear, but messed up. Let's just say that. The whole pyramid is messed up. So the journey, or as Brad said, the dream to make that rise is becoming increasingly impossible.
Yeah. And James says here, remember teams like Darlington? Indeed, and Darlington were very badly managed. They were absolutely taken to the cleaners by their owner. Brad, Leicester City. Within the boundaries of Leicestershire, we are the only professional football team. So you should say that we should be filling up stadiums more than Newcastle, more than Manchester, either club, more than either the Anfield clubs, and we're not. But is that because supporters, and I'm maybe going a little bit off track here, but the supporters are following these other clubs because they see them on the telly all the time. When I grew up, when I had my kids, I said, you support Leicester because your dad does. You support Burnley because you are in Burnley. That's where you're born. It's your team. But you're not supporting Arsenal, Chelsea, or any of those because I'll cut you out the will just because you see them on the telly. I can say, I just think that we need to. Was the mistake the Premier League? I mean, it's made football great, but it's split it all up, hasn't it?
Anything good, anything that seems good always comes with a cost. Premier League came with a cost. It came with popularity. It came with money. It came with greed to a point. You could argue in any aspects, and unfortunately, that's what it is. And we always knew when it happened, because that was considered the breakaway, wasn't it? The Premier League was a separate thing to Division 1, Division 2, because it's only in recent years they're not just called Division 1 anymore. They're called by the sponsors of the leagues that own them as well. And I think if you do certain things, there's so many things that go on in football behind the scenes that you don't see either. It's just a scenario that I just don't see the benefit in what they're trying to, what it trying to achieve. Because at the end of the day with football, it's just how it's brought to you in life. Whether it's peer pressuring because all your mates supported Liverpool, you want it to be cool and fitting, you supported Liverpool. Maybe you were born and raised, like you said, you gave your kids the options, they had two. Maybe you just grew up on a different generation. We grew up in different generations, and football evolves with them generations. You stated yourself, Chris, football changes with the times, and so do the fans, unfortunately, but we all share one thing in common. We know that football would be nothing without fans, and going to a match day, whether it's supporting your local team, which people themselves do more of, at the end of the day, we're all willing, no matter how much we moan, I would say 95% of moaning people out there, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, are still willing to pay the 45, 65, 75, 85, 160, whatever the season ticket or match day price is for that club, but they won't go and spend a £2.50, £5, £10 and spend half of that money, not even a quarter of that money, depending on the price, to go and watch an on-league side. So we're all a bit to blame for the struggles that some clubs have because we're drawn by the law of the Premier League. It's like playing the Pied Piper, isn't it, in a way? They did that very well, and unfortunately, this was the cost of the Premier League. Like you just said, it's a very good point you made because that is the outcome where we are today. Yeah.
I mean, Dave, you look at sort of Leicester, and we've got OH Leuven. I think if I'm maybe getting it, I think it's OH Leuven in Belgium. And we've let players go out there. We've let managers. Let's be honest with you. Pearson went out there for a while, but we can let players go over there and train. But I'm just have we got to wait for a club to say approach us and go, could we have that player on loan, please? So we might have some players there that maybe look good, but nobody's coming in for them. Where if we own, let's say Leicester, and you're not going to own a local team. Let's get that out the way straight away. You couldn't have them supporting, doing a local team. So Leicester, let's say, may buy, well, just for sake of argument, Newport, because Mike's here. That we can then say, look, we want to loan you this player. Now, it'll either do one of two things for us. It'll either make him a good enough player to come and play for Leicester, as in Harvey Barnes and Kieran Dewsbury Hall, or it will improve into such a much that we may get more money for him whilst they are developing and playing well for Newport County and doing them good.
I think that makes sense, yeah. But I think we can do that anyway. You don't have to own the club. But the reason we own OH is because we can get players bought through that club without having to pay a higher rate. If you take a youngster, I think there's a tribunal set over here what a price should be, but if it's sold to an overseas club, it's not quite the same. And I think I'm right in that, and we get a better deal out of it. So there's a good reason to have a club that's not in the UK or not in England, but I don't know. I just don't think the fans of the lower clubs would want to be affiliated with somebody like Leicester or Forest or anybody like that.
But you're
I don't
still
know.
keeping your identity, aren't you? Yes, you own. I mean, how many clubs out there? We're owned by King Power, but we're not King Power City. We are Leicester City. Nobody looks at us and goes, "We are King Power City."
Yeah, we're lucky,
How many
Chris.
shops, for
We've got
example, are out there that are owned by a big conglomerate, but they
We are
keep the
lucky.
name because that's the name that people know.
How many owners have fleeced their club? Look at Man United. They're a disaster. And why? Because the owners have fleeced them. Look at Leeds many years ago. European Cup final, suddenly gone. You could name a dozen clubs like that who have been fleeced by Newcastle. What happened there? So, again, you've got to go back to trust. I think we trust our owners. I don't know whether many other clubs do. Chelsea, I mean,
of course,
that could have gone totally wrong.
You've got to have the right owners. I agree. I agree that you wouldn't let Glazier family near any club if we had our way. But again, I'm going to come back to you, Mike, on this one. Leicester are pumping money into, or our owners are pumping money into this club in Belgium, when there are clubs in the UK that are suffering. And what will happen eventually, if all these clubs, more and more clubs go out of business, it's just going to harm us. It's like the foundations of the Football League. As the foundations of a building start to crumble, eventually the whole building will come down.
Yeah. There's two sides to it. Yes, when you take a foundation of something, it will ultimately crumble. But the problem that you've got is, as much as you take one club out, there'll be a team that will replace them. We've seen it with, obviously, when Barry went down, they were like, "Oh, don't worry, we'll just move the whole pyramid up by one," and then Barry's nature basically becomes irrelevant because the FA are like, "Well, don't worry about Barry, forget them. We filled their void by moving it all up by one, so forget about Barry." Where that's what you don't want. You want these clubs that go out of business to be recognised. You want them to be remembered as the team that the FA or whatever governing body it is, you let them go. You didn't do enough to prevent that club from dying, and that 100+ year history just banished like no tomorrow. So the problem is, I wouldn't want it to be. I'm being swayed to the idea of having a club own someone, a secondary club, but not in the UK. I think it's going to work outside the UK, like Leicester's case in Belgium, what Manchester City do in, Spain, France, Australia, India, because I know there's a chance that I know there's not a high chance that, for example, we'll just say Stockport. There's 99% chance Stockport will never reach the Premier League and be in the same league as Man United or Man City. But there's that 1% chance. And then if that does happen, then the whole sort of dual ownership thing could crumble. So I think that's what they have to take into consideration. Because if you look in Spain, for example, with Barcelona and Real Madrid, they have the B teams. They don't buy a separate club. They've got their sort of B team that they use as reserves to promote that within, to build them up to the main teams. And they can't ever get promoted to La Liga because they're part of the Real Madrid / Barcelona overall sort of circle. So even if they won the Segunda Liga in Spain, it's irrelevant because, like you said with Poole yourself, Chris, Poole won the league 4 or 5 years on the trot, but can't go anywhere.
Yeah, but that wasn't because they were owned by somebody else. That was because they hadn't got the facilities. We used to, Poole used to have their own ground. The ground is still there. The pitch is still there. The grandstand is still there, but they got thrown out of it because they couldn't afford to keep it up. And it is now a speedway and greyhound track, and it's used for that. So all the pitch gets these days, it doesn't get footballers on it; it just gets dog poo on it from the greyhound racing. That's what happened with Poole. And like I say, they've gone up not because of, say, the ownership, but because of the fact that they just didn't have the facilities. Brad, the Guardian did not The Guardian, the Observer, and please, guys, don't judge me. I'm not an observer reader here. But sorry, it's the Guardian. I'm not a Guardian reader either.
No,
but
I'm
they did
judging
a
you.
thing not so long ago, actually. In fact, they did it back in June this year. One is not enough. The growth in football's multi-club ownership model. And it says here, an idea taken to new levels by City Football Group is mushrooming in popularity, but with mixed success. And you get that, yeah, it's going to get mixed success. But is what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say now. Is the fact that, say, that was it, they say with Barcelona and Madrid, they've all got their B teams in the league. But if we start doing the B teams in the league, that's not, again, it's going to stop other teams getting up because those spaces are going to be taken.
Well, yeah, but so is owning a second team, and there's so many flaws in it in terms of looking at it from the owner perspective. Take the footballing side of it and look at it from their investment perspective. There's probably 6, maybe 7 managers in the top division that could probably realistically take a club that's in danger and get them out of it and do it well, that they don't have to worry about the next 4 or 5 years of loss of incomes, that it'll balance itself back out because they make so much money, it's ridiculous. But others, maybe not so much. I mean, 100 million is enough to buy a football club, but it's not enough to buy a football club and then help a struggling lower league club and balance some financial books and do everything. There's a lot of aspects to it. And there's another thing that we're not thinking about. Yeah, you could say multi-club ownership sounds like a good idea, but let's just say they made that rule customary. Let's say they enforced it and went 20 clubs in the Premier League right now. You're the new, like it was when they formed the Premier League. You're the new clubs of this era. You're the leading 20 clubs for this brand. You are hereby allowed permission. You have to buy a secondary club from any of the lower divisions, from the Championship all the way down to the level 8 of non-league or whatever. That means, let's just say they kept it within the League 2, League 1 Championship. Let's say they locked off the non-league, right, and did it that way. That's a good chunk, good quarter, almost half of that league that's owned by the Premiership. 40 clubs gone that are owned by 20 different people in the space. But what about the rest of them? What about the other clubs that are left over? Do you then tell the highest bidder can take that one and that one? Because then all of a sudden you've got I can't think of the word. I want to be really fancy, but I can't. You've got an empire. You've got a footballing empire between 20 people that own football clubs. And it's like, well, these are going spare. It's like a bring and buy sale, isn't it? Buy one, get one free. We'll get Oxford and we'll get Bury free because we need to get 2 clubs. Someone has 4 clubs because they've got more money. Someone has 7 clubs because they own Newcastle. They're the richest club in the world. Sorry, we'll have all of them. When does it stop? When do you start that chain? Because you're giving the power to the wrong sort of people. Because unfortunately, as much as we'd love it to be, they're not all like our owners. They're not all like other clubs owners that are great. There are people out there that will for money.
Yeah, I agree totally. And like you say, you'd have to put caps on it. Yeah, you can't have one club owning 7. That is a good point, Dave. We don't have a reserve league anymore. We don't have games for the reserves. I think there's the Premier League 2, which is for the under 21s. Facebook users just said they're under 21, 23 teams playing the EFL trophy. Which kind of demeans it a little bit, I think, to be honest with you, if you're saying to the clubs below, but that's for another debate another week. But we've got players that are sat in that reserve. Samari, for example, we've got Samari. We've paid him. He looks a good player. He's a winner. He won League 1 with Lille, and he's sat there and he's doing nothing, and he's struggling to adapt to English football. And the problem is because we haven't got a reserve structure set up in this football pyramid anymore. There used to be a reserve league, but we don't have that anymore. He sits there and he doesn't really get any experience. You could have, if you've got another club, whether in whatever form that is, he could go out and he could play maybe just 10 games for them, and he could literally maybe improve, get used to the English game more.
How many players could you loan out? There'd have to be strict regulations. Would you loan a
Well,
player
I mean, how
out?
many are Chelsea loaning out at the moment?
Well,
About 40, isn't it?
Yeah, but do you loan players out? If you own a club,
If
do
you're
you
only
loan-
doing one club, it's 4. You can only get, I think it's 3 or 4 loanees is the max you can get from one club
Yeah.
at this current moment in time. So if you're going to stay with that cap, that would be the most you could send down to one club. You can only get, I'm pretty sure it's 3, if not 4 loanees.
Yeah. There's a few sports
Well,
where
I just want to throw that out there.
first team players have been put into the second team, so the second team can win a certain game. Would that happen? You know, if your lower club is playing for the League Two title and it's getting close, do you give them 3 or 4 decent players? I mean, how do you judge who's playing well, who isn't? Is it by the money you've paid for them, the wages they're on, or, you know, I don't know. It's so difficult.
There would we know that there would have to be rules set down, Scott. Yeah, as I just said, then we've got the reserves. It has been taken by the under-23s, but then what if Samari is 27?
You can have.
I know you can say that the under-23s are allowed so many overage players, but then that's making a cock-up of the under-23, not under-23s, because suddenly Man City can put Grealish and all these into the under-23s. So yeah, there's arguments out we say on all ways, but again, you know, Mike, with Newport, I mean, it's a great thing not just for players, for managers as well. Surely managers can manage the lower teams, can learn things, and you know, maybe then move up to the parent club, maybe sort of in an under as a assistant manager role. I mean, you know, you look at Alex Ferguson; he changed his assistant managers more than most Welshmen change their underwear. Sorry, mate, couldn't resist. But so I mean that could be another scenario where it might help.
Yeah, we saw it recently with Blackpool's head coach Critchley went and joined Steven Gerrard as the assistant manager at Aston Villa. Obviously, it's not parent club, but you do see sort of like the head coach's last manager do go up into the Premier League and get these roles within that. So maybe that could be a way forward. The only thing against that, again, the only thing that really takes accountability over anything in our sport for me is the fans, what the fans think. Because with that Super League, the owners tried to absolutely crap on the fans. So the fan, if, for example, I'll take Newport, for example, if we were partly owned by Leicester, for example, because Leicester fans, if James Rowberry was then went and got us promoted next season, and then Leicester were like, right, you got Newport promoted, we're gonna come and take you, and he's gonna be our assistant to Brendan now. The fans would be an absolute outrage that they've just lost their manager that has guided them to promotion just because of and the fact that Rowberry's not even going to go there and be the manager. He's just going to be the second-hand man next to Brendan. That's why I wouldn't want it, because you lose all sort of, like we were just mentioning like 10 minutes ago about the community feel, the social feel. You would just lose that instantly because you get associated with these managers and players at lower leagues.
No, it's a fair point. When we looked at Manchester earlier, and let's have a look at London, and the one that stands out for me there is Leyton Orient, as close as you can be to West Ham, barring sharing the ground. And they were very worried when West Ham moved into their new stadium that they were going to lose a lot of supporters. But as a club like Brad, like a Leyton Orient, fans are going to get their head turns, and as fans come into the world and sort of decide what team they're going to choose, your head is going to be turned by these bigger clubs. And there's more. I can just see so many more smaller clubs slowly and surely disappearing, or going down to a level where they're part timers, and then do they ever get back?
Yeah, but you're never going to stop that with someone's personality. That's just how they're raised on the game, mate. And I'll stress that again. It's just how they're raised on the game. You're going to get people to have their heads turned easily. You're going to want to try and be honest to a team. But it happened with me. I started off predominantly following Hinckley. Hinckley United, which was a small village where I was living in. And that's what I started to get into football. My first big exposure to football was the Leicester game. And, well, that game was 3-3 draw against Arsenal. As everybody infamously knows, I go on about it enough, and that was it. I was done, I still went and saw Hinckley, but not as much, because Leicester was my priority. We're just human. Football fans is what we do, and that can't be helped. And there's other credentials to it as well, because it's easy enough to sit here and think, oh, well, if we just buy Stockport County or wherever, or all their troubles will be sorted because these rich owners will do it. Well, no. You said there, Samori's got nowhere to go. And you put out the idea of maybe sending him on loan somewhere for 10 games. Well, does Samori want to go Lincoln? Does Samori want to go Newport? I don't think he would. He's, like you said, he's a French champion. I think he came to the Premier League to go there. And a Championship club's not going to offer him a 10-game loan. Why would they want that for 10 games? Someone who goes there, you can't settle into a club in 10 games, let alone the reason you loan out to these Championship clubs and these League One clubs and at a push is because they're ready for the first team and they just need to get used to the English game. You send them there for that 6 months of the year because the club has an actual chance to keep hold of a talent to help them in the progression. What is it going to do to a promotion push or a fight against relegation if all of a sudden he gets the ground running and you go, actually, because we own you, we're going to cut this contract short by 4 days because we can, because we put it in there. So thanks very much. He's had 6 games for you. We're going to play him. It's just, you don't want to see that. I wouldn't like to see that in football. I don't think it's what you want to see in football. I want to see our players go there. I mean, again, it's attraction as well. I do apologise. Callum Wright, I think, was the youngster that was on loan at Cheltenham, wasn't he? Dewsbury Hall wouldn't go to Cheltenham on loan. He's past that part of his career. That's why he went to Luton on loan a few seasons ago, because he was at that part of the career. Would Luton have taken him on loan if they were told, yeah, you can have him, but only through the Christmas period? We just want to get the ground running, and we're going to have him back and play him. It already happens enough in football that you dread a recall from a club if you're guaranteed that they could pull the rug from under your new players' thing. And why would you want to go out loan if you're just going to get pulled back? You're just going to say, well, keep me here. I've told Pro you can keep it. I don't need to go anywhere now. You've just told me.
I would tend to say, and we'll come on to Dave now, I tend to say, but with that point is that, I'm sorry, we are paying your wages. You're not, you've come in, you're not good enough at the moment for this league. You do what we tell you. There's too many players, Dave, sit there getting splinters in their arse, like Samori, because they've not got that chance to play. And how will he ever get any better? How will he ever get any better if he's not playing? Well,
I think that's what training's all about. I mean, Vardy sat on the bench a lot the first season he was there. That famous bench picture. I still go back to, Brad was saying Hinckley. Hinckley had 3 clubs at one stage. And now they're struggling to keep one going, I think. But wouldn't it be nice if a team like Leicester could actually support that club somehow to help them to develop their facilities, to get maybe loan players? I mean, it's not a bad standard of football when it was a Southern Premier in the old days, I think. But why not? Why not do it that way?
We actually did, believe it or not. We used to have an organised friendly at their ground every season. We had it at their ground to give them the funds for the gates receipt. We actually did do that some aspects because that's what I used to go and see.
Talking of lower league clubs, he knows I mean it. He knows I mean it. Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm all right. Not too bad.
Good. So we're talking. I mean, you actually, I know you've got some thoughts on this, but I do remember. I don't know how true it is, but with Accrington Stanley, is that when they went out of business, as they did for many years, that might be feedback on you, Dan. I think I'm getting some feedback.
Right, if it is, bear with me. I thought I'd sorted it.
Right. It's only because it wasn't there before you came in.
Is that any better?
No, I think we're working now. Accrington Stanley were financially in trouble. The rumour is that they went to Blackburn and asked for a loan, or was it Burnley? Even sorry, he went to Burnley, in fact, and asked for a loan. Burnley said bugger off, and they went out of business. And that is a bit of animosity between you and Blackburn because of that. I don't know how true that is, But could Accrington have been saved if they'd been a feeder club or they were owned by a bigger club?
It's a tough one. I know what you're saying. It was true. The first time it happened, we did say no. We said it's not happening. End of the day, you make your bed, you lie in it, sort of thing. But we'd also at that time to cover, covering our own arse. I think at that time had also just had everything happen with the RTV deal. So when the RTV deal affected a lot of clubs at the time, we got really financially hit. We sort of in that period had already spent the RTV money before we'd received it. So it left us sort of in a similar sense to Accrington, but couldn't really do anything about it. However, Aki later on, again, had a couple of troubles. And, we told them, feel free to come to the club, stand outside with collection buckets on our match day. I'm sure fans will cough money in for it and stuff. And the club also matched whatever the fans made outside the ground that day. So we did eventually help out in the end, going back a good 6 years now.
I think Accrington Stanley, just looking there, 1966 they went out of business.
Was it right? Well, it was definitely not the RTV deal.
Definitely not the IT. I think Bob Lord just went no, basically.
No, there's a lot of stuff come out about Bob Lord recently. There's a lot of stuff come out about Bob Lord recently. But I just think in general, I can understand why English Premier League clubs are buying poorer clubs from abroad. I can understand that because the money in English football, like the price of Accrington Stanley, probably would be to a third tier Italian team. Is probably like a championship team to us. And sometimes you look at the finances involved in different leagues, and in fact, there's one thing I wanted to mention. Whatever happened to affiliations? We had some, didn't we? Like people have clubs where they'll send loan players out to, but now it seems to be the norm to actually buy a club. Because is that also a different avenue, similar to what Leicester did with the lad from Sheffield Wednesday, George Hurst? He sort of, you wanted him, they said no. So your little sister club that you'd bought signed him, and then sort of you got him from there to yourselves. And it's almost like a bit of a loophole for some of these Premier League clubs as well to do it. And it's not fair on the other clubs because they then don't make any sort of money from, the sort of fees because they've been bought by a foreign club. So they miss out on certain fees as well. So it affects them. I can understand the doing it abroad, doing it with smaller teams abroad.
We'll come on to that.
When you've got teams in English football, I just think that the teams like, no offence, Mark, but like Newport and stuff, the League Two teams, they're still trying to fight season in, season out. And if anything, that should start with the finances in the Premier League that should be going down our division, not the Premier League clubs having to go, nah. I don't care about your shitty League Two club. I mean, look at the way Watford approached Rob Edwards from Forest Green Rovers. If Forest Green Rovers were a championship club, you'd have been saying, hold on a minute, you've tapped up our manager, you've done it all behind our back, see you in court. But because it's little Forest Green Rovers, it's a case of, nah, we'll have Rob Edwards. Shut up, deal with it.
We're going down different lines there, but we'll come back to affiliates. I wanted to go into that a little bit straight after this.
Leicester lead again! The goals are flowing here now.
Indeed. If you want a good video, $6, which is about $4.95, introchamp.co.uk. It's a really good site. Get over there. They do a lot of mine for me. Really, really good. Mike, I mean, well, let's ask what everybody thinks. We'll start with Mike first of all. Then let me know, could we say, when you look at what Man City are paying for Jack Grealish, in purchase price, in wages. How many smaller clubs will that keep going? That could probably keep the whole of League Two going, if we're honest with you. And then should clubs that have dropped into the Championship get help from the Premier League with that season's parachute payments?
Parachute payments are there to solidify a team when they go down.
Or are they there to cover the fact that these clubs aren't very well run? Which was a subject we talked. He said if clubs are well run, they should they should be able to drop down a league without having to have help, because it's then giving them an advantage over other clubs that are down there.
Yeah, the problem that you've got is in the Premier League, we'll take Burnley, for example. You've got Max Cornet, Wout Weghorst, who are probably, I don't know if they're going to stay in the Championship, or if they were to stay in the Championship, probably two of the best players in that division. So they're going to be on double, probably even 3 or 4 times more than your average Championship player. So the parachute payment is there to try and keep those players at that club, to fund the wages to keep those players there, to hopefully then push them back up. But then the alternative side of that is, for example, Millwall or Preston or Hull City, Birmingham will be like, well, hang on a minute. We've been trying so much to get out of the Championship for 3-4 seasons, and then big Burnley compared to us come down and they get a sort of help from the Premier League to send them straight back up again. I can totally sympathise with the Championship teams, because a good mate of mine is a Swansea fan, and he said every single year it just gets 10 times harder to get out of the Championship because of the money the Premier League influxes into these relegated teams.
I mean, you would say, Brad, wouldn't you, that Championship teams, if they've got up to that level, shouldn't really need that much help in as fact as, we should be looking at doing it clubs. Maybe, as Dave said earlier, go down and start at League Two and go back from League Two. And make them those clubs. But is it right again? And we'll go around everybody with this question, that we are paying clubs that have been run that badly that they've got relegated, because yes, they've got these expensive players, but clubs look at it and they've got to think, we nearly got relegated last season. Shit, we better be careful who we buy in case we go down.
Well, yeah, but the idea just doesn't get solved by allowing multi-club ownership. It just doesn't, in my opinion. And I've listened to both sides of the argument, and I'm still unmoved on my stance on it. And that's because, right, if let's just say we were all these rich multi-million-pound owners. First of all, we wouldn't be doing this. We'd be sat in a nice beach somewhere drinking a good time to all the billions and billions we've got. But right, if you brought 10 stores, 10 different stores as well, with all your million, not all of it, but you spent a good majority of your well-earned profit margined income on buying 10 completely different but badly run, down in the doldrums stores. Even if 5 or 6 of them are a success, 40% or 50% or even worse if you have a really bad investment, which you do, and we've seen bad investments in this sport before, no matter how much money they've pumped into a club. That's a lot of money to risk as a capita. And it is just coming straight down to a business sense, because if they do it in that way, and you say that, yes, Man City do have the money, but they're also businessmen. This isn't a monopoly board where they can just pack it away and call it a draw when it starts to go wrong. This is... the bottom line of this, the idea that it could be done that way sounds great, but it only sounds great in a computer game if you could do it and have fun and put a cheat code into Football Manager and do it, because then your business. But the thing is, it just feels like it's detrimental to football that we are there at Burnley. They never actually brought Atkinson. All they said is you can stand outside our ground and collect some money for your club, but they still weren't willing to help them no matter what their financial state was. They weren't willing to put the book in, because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, football always has been about the survival of the fittest. And I don't think football as a sport suddenly either wants these clubs to go, right, we'll take you, and you, and here's 150 million. Here's things. No, it doesn't work like that. It's so structured and it's so financially right that if even more than a quarter of these clubs, whether it's 4 they buy, 10 they buy, whatever, fail, what happens And they don't just fail, Chris. They don't just fail and then, oh, well, that all's well and good, we'll sell it or whatever, we'll get the money back. They fail, and then you have to put another 80 million in. And then they don't quite fail as badly, but they're still suffering, so you've got to put another 50 million in. And it's just logic for the football club that they'd rather take the sellers to do what Burnley did and go, oh yeah, raise money for them, help them out, like, you know, let's save our local team. It only matters to them when it's their local club. I can tell you this now, as much as we love our owners, I don't think they give a rat's arse if a club in London's struggling, because if they did, they'd be doing something about it. No matter how
they
great.
would. No, I agree.
It's a perfect world and it's a perfect scenario.
I'm trying to cut the answer short here, Brad.
Yeah,
I'm trying to cut the answer short to get Dave in. David, I mean, he makes a good point, Brad. Long but good. But I'm just, you know, that money, for example, that goes to Burnley, Norwich, and Watford for going down, could that be used to be divvied out between League Two clubs? I mean, we are there funding failure. You know, those teams are getting more money in parachute payments than League One, League Two clubs are seeing in a season.
Well, you remember going into liquidation. I mean, you know, that was tough for Leicester. We were funded by, I don't know, but it certainly we could have done with a parachute payment and stuff like that. But I was thinking also when Brad was talking about it, there's some big clubs in League One. You know, Sheffield Wednesday, you know, your very big clubs. They will come back at some stage. They will. What happens then? I mean, Sheffield Wednesday, 45,000 people used to get each week. Newcastle have been down there. Clubs will come back and they will think, well, hang on a minute. Why should we do what you tell us to do? Why are we? Do we have shareholders from the main club, or do we have our own board of directors? I don't know. I think it's so complicated. And I still come back to the honesty bit. And what are you in it for? Are you in it for the football, or are you in it to make money, or to launder money, more importantly? Because that's been going on a lot over the last 20 years.
It has. Let me ask you this then, David. That, you know, we make the point very rarely, you know, quite rightly, what happens if Team B that you own goes up and is in the same league as Team A, or Team A goes down, is in the same league as Team B. Let's just take, and I know I'm going out on a limb here, but obviously the whole show is going out on a limb. But let's say, for example, Leicester qualify for the Europa Conference next year, and we OH Leuven qualify for the Europa Conference next year. What happens then? Because we are potentially playing our sister club at some point.
I have no idea.
Yes. Yeah.
I'd like to hope we get it.
I think what would happen is there would be a rule in there that says you can't play teams that are owned. They're very good at this, aren't they, UEFA? Because they managed to split all the teams up, which I'm sure they could do if, you know, Burnley owned Accrington and got Accrington in the next round. But Dan,
probably just actually treat it like an officiate club, Chris. They'd probably treat it like that and say, well, any players you've got loaned to them can't play against you, but you're free to play each other. It tends to be how it goes. I think that would be.
That's a good point. That's a good point. But the fact that we own them,
it might get a bit more
different. Yeah. But let me come to you. I mean, Dan. You know, you knew last season or the season before last, you knew that you were struggling as a team. You only just managed to stay up. You've then gone down this season. And I'm not rubbing it in, but you came on the show. But have you been rewarded for being a failure? And should your club have been getting ready for going down from about, say, January, and maybe sold some players off that are on high wages, or when you sign a player, and Leicester aren't in this position at the moment, but we may be in 4 or 5 years, if we've struggled for a few years, have a clause in their contract that if you do go down, they lose half the money, or you know, that they can be on the transfer market.
I'm sort of, again, it's an on the fence situation with it, because even if it wasn't my club that went down, I'd still be saying the same thing. I think you're right in what you're saying. You're watching him tonight. What are you on about? But yeah, you're right in what you're saying in terms of it does feel like you're being given an incentive for failure, and it's not right. I totally get that. It's not right. But clubs do need to, as you said, plan appropriately for if relegation's going to happen. You know, I mean, we probably thought that. We probably thought, right, that's it. We're looking like we're set for the drop. Okay, we started playing well towards the end. But you've always got to have that plan A and plan B. If it does go, you know, balls up, right, this is what we've got to do. And sometimes it's not even just about being rewarded for failure. That money, in a sense, I do agree, could be filtered down. And as Brad said, it also does help facilitate some of the big wages until you get them off your wage bill. But then flip that. If it is really about the players and the wage bill, once you've got rid of them players, pay that money back.
You wanted to make a point there, David.
Yeah, Chris. If it was your part solution to the problem, you know you're going to get relegated. So are your players. Bottom at Christmas with no chance of staying up, and we stayed up by 6 points? I can't remember now, or a bit more. If we'd have sold our main players, we'd have gone down definite. So,
yeah, but would we as a club have been? I'm hoping we would have done. But should we have been having a like Dan said? Should we have been having a plan B?
I think they have there's always a plan in the back of the minds of the owners, but I think they just
when
don't
Leicester
want to.
came up. Let's be honest with you. We any team that comes up, it's got to be in the back of their mind that they might go straight back down again.
Yeah,
and it's we see this with Norwich, with Watford. So Leicester, when they came up, and it is a very much of is a gamble of do you gamble like a team and stay up, or do you not go and play go mad on money and you go down? It is a difficult one, but it's all about, like you said earlier, a club being run well.
Yeah. I'm guessing that we didn't have players on high wages then, only when the following year or two.
That's another thing though as well, David. Like you see Harry Kane at Leyton Orient, holding the new Leyton Orient home and away shirts up. Because he's sorted out the sponsorships and stuff. Because he's got a bit of his hands in there at Leyton Orient. It's not even so much now. Even Premier League clubs, it's Premier League players. You've got Vardy, who's obviously bought into a team in America. We've got, as I say, Harry Kane with Leyton Orient.
Class of 92.
Yeah, class of 92 at Salford.
How's that going?
Yeah, those back-to-back promotions they were wanting are taking a wee while, aren't they?
And then it takes 400 to get back.
But I mean, Mike, do we need to literally? And we've seen today there's so many complications here, but I think we would all agree that something needs to be done because the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And somebody made the comment earlier, and I apologise, I think I put it up and I can't remember who it was, that, come lockdown, Premier League clubs, a lot of them weren't even prepared to help out those clubs when, the big teams could easily ride that storm. And the likes of Newport, the likes of Stockport and Millwall, but Bury, clubs like that would have struggled. Well, did struggle, didn't they? And there's got to be surely, I accept that these clubs, not all of them are run well, but some of them are run well, but just can't get the fans in to make it. I think should there be some form of money being dripped down into the lower leagues?
First of all, it's all about accountability and taking, because with great power comes great responsibility. And you look at
Spider-Man says, I believe.
Yes, indeed. I was trying to get that little quote in there, but no, the rich will always stay rich, and the poor majority will always stay poor in terms of football side of it. You won't see Barrow splashing 20, 30 million pounds on a player. It just will never happen because the whole infrastructure of the English game is the way it is. Yes, some may say it's corrupt. There's a lot of cases for that, which is definitely down the wrong avenue of this type of debate. But during that moment in time was something that no one ever foresaw a lockdown and no football and the loss of revenue to such a high rate was nothing that anyone could plan for. You were mentioning earlier about when you're in a relegation battle, you have a plan A and a plan B. No one would have ever planned for that to happen. But when it does happen, you're like, well, surely the people at the top have to look down the pyramid and look at the loss of revenue that the lower league teams are getting, because
it doesn't. Do, and don't call me Shirley.
Yeah,
I'll get that quote in.
Yeah, it doesn't take a genius to realise that teams lower down the pyramid are going to lose money when there's no people coming through the gate.
Yeah, I think it would be very, very difficult, and just pulling it to a close now, it would be very, very difficult for this to happen. I think we would all agree that something definitely needs to be done, though, to help the smaller clubs out. Talking to smaller clubs, I think Dan wants to go to the toilet.
Please, sir. Not to be honest, it's just one club comes to mind, really. Macclesfield. I mean, look at them. They've obviously faltered. They've gone down the pyramid. They crumbled. They were struggling to even finance the stadium. And then obviously Robbie Savage came in, and I can't believe I'm actually complimenting this former Blackburn player, but to be honest, he's gone in there. He sorted them out. Last season, they were playing against my local teams, Colne, Nelson, Padiham. They've been promoted, and now they sort of, they're finding their way up the pyramid again. And, you only have to go back to the 90s. I remember watching Burnley playing Boston United and Hereford and stuff like that. And now you don't see these clubs anymore. But obviously it's so easy to focus on your club and think, wow, it makes you realise and appreciate that we've obviously done things right. And it's just that it's not happened for them. But is it because of history? Is it because Burnley had a history previously that Burnley had certain, financial gain compared to teams like Boston and Hereford? But then you look at teams like Barnet, who you didn't think would have had a penny. Next minute, they've got Edgar Davids playing in midfield.
Not that he did them much good, of course.
No, but this is what I mean. There's things that we can say these clubs go and just nosedive, but then they make stupid mistakes like that. Notts County, Sven, the Sol Campbell situation, and everything else.
I think that was very bad owners. That was crooks rather than owners, I think. But yeah, I take your point. And Dave, last question. I mean, football moves on. We've said that. Not that far back in Leicester's history, we bought £1 million for Mark Draper. I couldn't believe it. £5 million for Akinbaye. I couldn't believe it. And yet now we are in that bigger league club, if you like.
Well, I couldn't believe Akinbaye.
No,
not at all.
I still can't believe it now.
Nah,
I pretend it doesn't happen.
Akinbaye.
Mark Draper. Yeah, that was a shame we let him go, wasn't it?
But could you imagine then that we would be in this position where we're paying £40 million for a player?
Money-wise, no, because I don't think anybody could with any club. But I remember us buying Keith Weller for 100,000. It's sports headlines all week. Never been known, £100,000. But
I think that's still Burnley's highest purchase, to be honest.
Yeah, probably. Port Vale, their chairman used to own Nuneaton Borough's ground, which is a kind of sort of ownership thing, but lower down. And when Nuneaton were really having trouble, he threatened to foreclose on the ground. So that's one lower league club to a non-league club, and to treat them like that was appalling. And it affected, that they could have got out of business. So it goes back to round full circle to what we said. It's trust in the person that's owning the main club.
Man City did to Bury as well. They took them out of their training ground. And that was well. I mean, in fairness, they had run it down to something like New Parks, but
I'm surprised Gary Neville didn't step in there either, because obviously he used to go to a Bury lad. He used to go to the games. His dad Neville, used to be in charge, and you'd think, he'd have done something there, especially when you see the guy at Sunderland, in the documentary on Netflix. I think they played a game against Cambridge United or Colchester, someone beginning with C, if I remember. And he again, like Dave said, owned the rights to their stadium, but didn't have anything to do with the club other than the stadium rights. So they were saying a bit like, oh, is this like contradictive? Like conflict of interest?
But I think it's a knock it down and build houses on it. That's how he makes loads of money.
Yeah, well, and then of course you got the full other way to go. It's like AFC Wimbledon, buy a football club and just move them. But
they've returned.
The story.
They have returned.
Guys, we're going to call it a day. We're coming up to the hour and a half. Thank you very much, everybody that joined in. Dave, it's been a pleasure as always. Next week we're going to be looking at should Premier League clubs not be playing in the League Cup. We've got a lot of games to be played as Premier League clubs, as we know. We're going to lose 6 weeks because of the World Cup, and we should also get rid of FA Cup replays as well. We played too many games as it is, too many games as it is, and so why are we playing in these? Dare I say meaningless trophies? But
I'm sorry, I shouldn't.
Next Friday, we'll talk about.
I'm sorry, I should miss that.
Before anybody starts, we'll talk about it next Friday.
I won't be here next week. I'm in Hinckley.
You in Hinckley? Not a problem, mate. We'll catch you for the next one. Thank you very much, Dave.
You're welcome.
As always,
thanks, mate.
glad
nice
to have you on.
Boys. Cheers,
nice talking to you, Dave.
Cheers. I haven't thrown you off yet. Or is that still to come? Take care, mate. All the best. Brad, thank you very much as always. Matter of opinion, with your details are in the chat below. We will see you probably next week then, if that's if you are free. If you're not going to a meeting or somewhere.
No, not to my knowledge. I'm sure I will be here again. If not earlier, I'll be on next week's debate show. I'm looking forward to it, mate. I've enjoyed tonight's show as well.
Indeed.
And
I think we're going to have Anthony on next week. So,
it's like Steve. It's like Dan. We just got rid of him, and he's back. Can't get rid of either of you.
But he's a Premier League. He does support a Premier League team amongst others. Thanks very much, mate. Matter of opinion on YouTube and full-time focus on Twitter.
Yeah, that's it, and that's where you'll find both of them. Cheers again, lads. Nice talking.
Take care, mate.
Great talking to you as always.
Take it easy, Brad.
Right. Mike, you were late coming on, so I haven't got you in the description below, but I will add you on afterwards. Do tell where you can be found.
Yeah, Mike Green on YouTube. An upsetting video I had to make earlier about Don Telford, but oh well, is what it is. Football moves on. Check me out on there. Just under 200 away from 3K now. So really looking to push towards that and, put a lot more League 2 content out next season. So yeah, that's where you can find me, Mike Green on YouTube.
Right. Thanks very much. Thanks for coming on and giving us the lower league.
Me and Dan done you pray for lower league football, didn't we, Dan?
Yeah, we did.
Well, they're in the five-a-side league next season, mate. And if you do want to know where you can send letters to, it is Her Majesty's Prison, Newport. That's where Dan is.
Not a prison.
See you later, mate. Thanks very much.
Thanks for getting me on.
Cheers. Bye. And Dan, where can people find you? Obviously in the Championship, but we'll add your details in again later down below. But where can people add you in?
Yeah, so you can just search Turf Morehouse on all social media platforms, and you'll find me there.
Good man. And you're playing a local team in your first game next season for you, Huddersfield.
Told Huddersfield.
Back home, won't it, for you?
Told Huddersfield in my own backyard.
Yeah. Well, big Sheffield Wednesday fan, aren't you? And that Yorkshire lass that's there with you, what can I say? Mate, thanks very much for popping on. Take care. I'll see you soon.
Cheers. Speak to you soon, pal.
Thanks a lot. Oops, a daisy. I did everything. I muted you. I enlarged you. Did everything but remove you. Let's try that again.
It's not Chris. Chris, can I just say, it takes a while to mute me, but it doesn't take long to make me go large.
Is that what you say to Kate? Right, we'll leave it at that. Guys, thank you for watching. Thank you, Helen. I hope you enjoyed the stream. Hope everybody in the chat enjoyed the stream. Helen, James, who else have we had in? Cyber Leader was in earlier. Thank you very much. Rennie was in earlier. Statman was in earlier. Chris Welsh, thank you very much for popping in as well. And Kate popped in. Thank you very much, Kate. I think I missed some of your posts out. I do apologise. And of course, Renee, like I said, thank you very much. And don't forget, the season is over. The new season will be amongst us soon. We have got so many new shows coming out, including this. Yeah, the Leicester Till I Die news show. I'm not sure how that's going to go forward. It might be regularly for 10 minutes. It might be weekly for an hour. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see how the news rolls. And if you want to save a bit of money, here's what you can do.
Leicester lead again. The goals are flowing here now.
The Leicester Till I Die shop is now open.
For all your Leicester Till I Die merchandise,
Visit the Leicester Till I Die shop at our website.
So if you are looking to save money, like Burnley fans, you can get intros made for just $6. $6 for a professional intro. That is amazing. www.introchamp.com, and it's really good site. $6. That's about $4.95. 5% if you're a member. If you're a gold member. Austin Powers, here we go. If you're a gold member, 5% off all the shop at LeicesterTillIDie.com, and 10% off all your gaming needs, all your gaming accessories, 10% off there if you check that out as well. The details have been going across the bottom. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Thank you for listening. Great debate tonight. No arguing, no shouting. And that's what I like to say. No answers. It is purely a debate, the Friday debate show. Thanks very much, guys. I will see you next week, Monday, 9 o'clock for the World Cup preview. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching Leicester Till I Die. This is Chris saying goodbye, and see you next time.
Thanks for watching. These videos are tremendous. You better like them too, or I'll be back.
Sam Weber on the pitch. They think it's all over. It is now.